I can remember, seems like yesterday to me, that I received a phone call from a man who became a good friend and a man whom I learned literally to love. He's like a big teddy bear, really, to tell you the truth. At any suggestion of hiding the truth or masking the truth or being anything other than honest, he comes unglued. He won't stand for it. He doesn't like secrecy. He and I could have been brothers. We're not. Our religions are vastly different from each other, but in a way very much the same. He was fed up with the way the federal government was going, and he wanted to do something about it, and he wanted to know if I would be interested in helping him to found a new political party in order to put a constitutionally committed team in the White House to restore the nation. Well, after listening to him for a while and understanding finally that we agreed on almost every single point and have in every conversation that we've had since then, except on some small disagreements on how to go about what we're doing, and we always solve those. We did form the Constitution Party, and it wasn't just he and I. Quite a few other people involved in that foundation. And many of you have become members. Those of you who have not, I'm sure, will, when you learn that we are serious and we're the only legitimate and viable alternative to the status quo. I saw for the first time this last weekend a videotape of the very first speech that my friend Aaron Russo, who's the chairman of the Constitution Party, ever made in his life. Not just the first speech about what's wrong in this country, but the first speech he's ever made in his life. This is a man who has brought to the stage some of the greatest music stars who have ever appeared on a stage. He has produced two of the best movies that have come to the screen in many years, both of them nominated for many Academy Awards, and I think they took away some. He had a big, giant award sitting on the table in the conference room where we met this past weekend. He's a modest man, and if you met him in a store somewhere, you'd never dream that you were talking to a multimillionaire. I'm going to play for you now this first speech that Aaron Russo ever delivered anywhere to anyone. And it was at the National Review Institute Conservative Summit in Los Angeles, California. And I think that you're going to find this extremely interesting. And those of you who firmly believe through some vast misinformation project that you all seem to subscribe to, that all the Jews in this world are intent upon enslaving you and taking over. And I've never understood how you could believe that when they make up less than 4% of the population of the United States. I think you'd better listen very closely to this. I think you should also look at the lists of Jewish organizations and prominent Jewish people who have helped us come out against this conference of states to defeat it soundly. I think we have to learn to be Americans, and not Jewish Americans, not American Indians, not African Americans, not Aryan Americans, not British Israelists. We either have to be Americans or we're going to lose all of our freedoms. And our common bond, and yes, there is one, is liberty. And I think more and more people are beginning to discover that. So without further ado, may I present to you Mr. Aaron Russo.
There's a way to twist it. Aaron Russo can be said to have broken onto the national scene in 1967 when he moved from New York to Chicago and opened his own club, the Kinetic Playground, where he introduced, promoted, and produced some of the 60s most successful rock acts, including The Who, Led Zeppelin, The Grateful Dead, and the Jefferson Airplane, among others. In fact, many rock pundits consider Aaron to be one of the most important music producers of the 60s. In 1972, he began his 7-year partnership with Bette Midler. And when he turned to feature films, he introduced Bette Midler to motion picture audiences while producing The Rose, for which Midler won an Academy Award nomination. Since then, this creative and enthusiastic filmmaker has produced the 1983 comedy hit Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, Teachers starring Nick Nolte, Laura Dern, and Morgan Freeman, and Wise Guys starring Danny DeVito. To date, his films have won 5 Academy Award nominations. Today, he has turned his considerable talents to organizing the Constitution Party to fight what he strongly believes is the federal government's encroachment on the liberties and rights of individual Americans. No one has the right to take away my rights, just as I don't have the right to take away anybody else's, he proclaims. The Constitution is the greatest political document ever formulated. The aim of the Constitution Party is to protect it from the ravenous appetite of federal government. Ladies and gentlemen, Aaron Russo.
Hello, everybody. By the way, over lunch, he was all wrong. You can be conservative and be an artist, I promise you. Anyhow, that's not why I'm here. They've asked me here to speak on how movies influence politics. In my experience, it's been the other way around. Usually the politics come first. So that's why I'm going to talk about politics first. Sure, I'd like to get back to the important business of creating films, but in good conscience, I just can't do that. Why, you may ask? Because while I used to be just an American, I've recently begun thinking that I could actually be an American citizen and take individual responsibility and action when something goes wrong. And a lot is going wrong. And it's time to ring the bell. And it's time to wake everybody up to what's happening in our country. I saw a bumper sticker on the back of a pickup truck the other day. It read, "I love my country, but I fear my government." Have you ever had the feeling that your government was treating you less and less like a citizen and more like a subject that they control? Suppose you were watching a 1940s movie, and there's a scene taking place at a bank where a handsome couple's withdrawing their money, and the teller says, "Sorry, we have to report all withdrawals over 10,000 Deutschmark. The government demands you fill out this form." You'd say, "Oh, Nazi Germany. What a terrible place that was." But that's exactly what's happening here, right now. But how? And by what authority can Washington do this? The simple truth is that Washington doesn't have the legal authority. Then how do they get away with it, you may ask? By intimidation, by use of force, by threatening jail. That's coercion, and that's tyranny. What's the definition of liberty? Does anybody know the definition of liberty here? The absence of coercion. We're supposed to have liberty in this country. That's what this country is built on. Don't we own our own lives? Shouldn't we be able to do what we want to do as long as we don't hurt anybody else? Do you think what the federal government's doing is permitted under the laws of the Constitution of the United States? Where does it say in the Constitution that Washington can tax incomes that force millions of Americans to work for them from January to June? It doesn't. The Constitution clearly says there shall be no direct taxes on the individuals of this country. Then how did the income tax come into being? They passed the 16th Amendment, or so we all thought. But it was never ratified by the states. It's a hoax. It's a fraud. For 80 years we've been lied to by our federal government. So they take it to court. And what happens? The appellate court says, this is not a question of law, it's a question of politics. So they take it to the legislature, and the legislature, Congress says, this is not a question of politics, this is a question of law. So they bounce it back and forth. They go to the Supreme Court to hear this. And what does the Supreme Court say? We don't want to hear the pace. Very easy, just bounce it back and forth and keep sucking our blood. That's what's happening in America today. Now they put a magnetic strip in our currency. Do you know about that? Do all of you know about that? Who doesn't? Let me show you something. Take out a $10 bill or a $20 bill or a $50 bill or a $100 bill after 1990.
Mine has a picture of Dukakis on it.
The Massachusetts currency.
Anyway, you'll see if you hold it up to the right, you'll see a strip in that bill. It has to be after 1990 or $10 and above. Now, if you put a little whip in that bill, you'll see a little white strip come out, and you can pull it out. See that?
Check on my money.
Now, what this strip does is this has been in existence since 1990. Since George Bush, by the way.
Huh?
This strip allows the government to know how much money you carry in your pocket if you're going to an airport, a bus station, anywhere you're going. Why is this their business? These are your dollars, not theirs. It's your life. When did we turn our lives over to Washington? Why is the Justice Department authorized to kill innocent children, as they did last year in Waco when they killed the Branch Davidians? You know they use CS gas. Do you know CS gas is an agent that's banned from war? And they use it on little children? These people were never accused of a crime. They were never charged with anything. They could have picked up David Koresh jogging anytime they wanted to. Where is their accountability? If this would have happened in China, we'd be screaming about the Chinese storming a church and killing innocent children. It would be worse than Tiananmen Square. But it's America. Not a peep out of the media about the injustice. Think about that. What about this little Vietnamese farmer out in Bakersfield, tilling his field? He ran over a kangaroo rat with his tractor. The government is trying to fine him $250,000. And they're trying to put him in jail for a year. As well as the man who sold him the tractor. Okay? Is this not insanity? Why do we put up with this nonsense? When are we going to stand up and stop it? Why is the government unaccountable for its behavior? I'll tell you why. Because it no longer serves the people. The government are our rulers, and we've become their slaves. We used to have a right to own firearms for sport, target, or in the gravest extreme for personal defense. Even defense against the government. Don't we have a right to protect our children, our families from danger anymore? How much longer do you think we're going to have that right? Not much. Have you seen the new U.S. police badge? United States Police Badge. Have you seen this one yet? Shades of the SS. I'd like to pass this around. You can just pass it to everybody, so everybody here knows what's going on. It shows that there's now a national police force, United States Police Force, which is totally against the Constitution of the United States. Now, every session of Congress, they had more punitive laws. And how many of us realize or even think about the effect those laws are having? Is the crime bill really going to do anything about crime? Or is it just another crime against the people? Here it is, the crime bill, right here. Almost 500 pages of fine print. Let me read you a little bit, so you know what's in it. I made a copy because it's easier to read. Section 180102, Rural Crime and Drug Enforcement Task Forces. The Attorney General, in consultation with the governors, mayors, and chief executive officers of state and local law enforcement agencies, may establish a rural crime and drug enforcement task force in judicial districts that encompass significant rural land. Assets seized as a result of investigations initiated by a rural crime and drug enforcement task force and forfeited under federal law shall be used consistent with the guidelines on equitable sharing established by the Attorney General and of the Secretary of the Treasury, primarily to enhance the operations of the task force and its participating state and local law enforcement agencies. You know what that says? It says they can investigate you, take your money, take your house, divide it up amongst themselves, use it against you, and you haven't been charged with a crime or convicted of anything. Due process in America is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. This is what you have to understand. And this is what you have to wake up to. And this shall include representatives from many different agencies. The Office of the United States Attorney for Judicial District, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Immigration and Naturalization Service, the United States Marshal Service, and may include representatives of other federal law enforcement agencies such as, not inclusive, but such as the United States Customs Service, United States Park Police, United States Forest Service, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and Bureau of Land Management. Any one of these people can start an investigation against you and take away your life because they choose to investigate you. What about GATT, the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade? 22,000 pages, 365 pounds. That's a free trade agreement? For whom? Not for us. No one, not even the congressman or your senators even read it. It would take 4 senators to lift it. Okay? And yet, the White House is pushing everybody to sign it so it can pass this enormously complex series of laws that are... You just sit and take this shit. I'm sick and tired of it. I can't tell you how fed up I am with this government and the way it's running. Our Constitution is based on the firm belief in the sovereign right of the individual. There is no sovereign right of the federal government. That's why our Constitution was written. The Constitution limited the authority of the federal government. But little by little, Washington's taken away our authority, buried it under regulations created by bureaus and agencies whose sole function is taking away our natural rights. Taking away our natural rights and granting us an occasional privilege. Aren't we blessed? You know what really scares them in Washington? The Constitution scares them because it limits them. Just like a governor on a car. Like a lot of you, I hadn't read it since high school. Even then, I only read it the night before my civic. That's what they gave me a thing that says time, so I have to leave. But I'm going to finish anyway. They wanted me to come. I want my Constitution back. That's what my grandfather left Europe for. To get away from the bloodsuckers who want them to do what they said without question, to obedience. Now look at Washington. They don't care about you as some 200-year-old parchment. No, they don't have use for something as antiquated as the Constitution. They have an ideology. These are the people Jefferson and Madison and Paine and Adams and Ben Franklin warned us against. It's now time to stand up like our ancestors and shout, "Don't tread on me. I won't allow it." You think they'll listen? No. I doubt it. Not at first. Because that's the arrogance of their power. But unity is our collective strength. So what I hope each of you will do is get a copy of our Constitution and give it a reread. photocopy it, pass it around, fax it, put your initials on it, sign it that you've read it. Send a copy to your legislator, your congressman, your senators. Remind them to read it so they know why they should be thrown out of office. Tell them we won't be bullied and condescended to any longer. We want our Constitution and our country back, and we want to see it run the way it was planned. We want our natural rights and to own our own lives again. To own our own lives. Now, back to filmmaking. There is a film I'd like to make. Actually, I've been looking for the right script. It starts like a Frank Capra movie. Wide panoramic shot of a long line of refugees leaving Washington. Cut to a close-up on the grimy faces and skewered ties of the displaced bureaucrats and lobbyists. Then we cut to a group of office and construction workers, housewives, teachers, cops, firefighters, doctors, nurses, and even some movie people. Citizens washing down the Capitol steps, washing down the Capitol steps. So it's clean. One more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom Paine. Aaron Russo.